In today's edition of the Your Law Firm Success podcast, I talked to Ruth Croman, who's the managing partner at McNabb's in Perth in Scotland. One of the reasons I wanted to chat to her was because she's performing a role which I think can be quite common and quite challenging within small to medium-sized law firms, which is that of the hybrid technician, lawyer and managing partner. In this episode, she talks about the transition from lawyer into management. She talks about succession planning, and she talks about attracting and retaining female talent. And given the fact that we have many more women than men now entering the profession, this is something well worth listening to. Ruth, thanks for coming in this morning. Thanks for travelling down. Where have you come from?
You're just outside Dollar.
Okay, so where's that for those who are...
For those that are not familiar with the geography of central Scotland, so
Yes.
About an hour away, kind of sits between Stirling and Kinross.
Right, okay, so an hour away from Glasgow.
Yeah, and I've had my initiation around the east end of Glasgow this morning as well.
Well, it's a pleasant place to be.
on a Thursday morning,
Yeah.
all is well with the world.
Good, and so I obviously know you, and we've worked with you for quite a while, worked with McNabb's. Could you tell me a bit about you, your role now, how you've got there, and a bit about McNabb's in general, please? Yeah,
sure. So I am 49, just about to be next week. Have been a lawyer very conventionally, went to uni straight out of school, did my law degree, did my diploma, did my traineeship, and then have worked in litigation and laterally in family law in the Perthshire area all that time. I'm now the managing partner at McNabb's. McNabb's is a personal services legal firm based in Perth, but we have offices in Pitlochry, Bridge of Allen and Blairgowrie as well. And I think there are 44 of us at the present count, and I do a hybrid of the managing partner role and trying to drive the firm forward, but also I have still a foot in fee earning as well, so I have this kind of hybrid role just now.
And why was that one, you decided to make the move into management, but not completely?
Yeah, I think just the size of firm. So I became managing partner in 2017, and we had never had a managing partner up until that point. And I think the firm had been through various changes of personnel at partner level as well. And there was a recognition then that actually we needed to, get our stuff together and just if we were serious about trying to do things differently, I suppose, then we needed to have a bit more of a cohesive approach and have someone that was focused on driving that forward. And at that time, I think there were 5 partners that we had, or 4 partners, I think. And it seemed to fall onto me that everyone thought that it would be a good idea if I did this as well. And I suppose the last 6 years really have just been an evolution of what that role looks like for us as a firm. We're certainly still a really small firm. We're still a personal legal services firm. I don't think there is an economic a commercial justification for having a full-time managing partner. And so because it was a new role for our firm as well, it's been great because it's allowed me to shape it as to how I think it should be done. But that has meant having a foot in both camps, effectively, having that managerial oversight, but still being in court, on the ground, speaking to clients on a daily basis.
Yeah. See, it's interesting because, you say you're still a small firm. The vast majority of firms in the UK are, 1 to 4 partners. I think there's something like 85% of them. This podcast is directed and designed for those in small to medium-sized law firms understanding how they can make their law firm more successful. And one of the challenges that they are always going to have is making that decision as to when you move from becoming a technician into management. And just to cover that phrase a wee bit more, we were talking about it before we started recording around the E-Myth by Daniel Gerber, which is a very, very good book. And it talks about, at the outset, how one will typically start a business because one is good at something, or as a technician, whether that be a baker, a hairdresser, or a lawyer, then once you start to run your own business, you're required to take on 3 different roles, which is that of the technician, that of the manager, and that of the entrepreneur, until you get to the point where you are able to take on people to perform those roles. But in McNabb's, you'd never had a managing partner.
That's right.
What was the genesis for that change, or for you to decide, no, this is something that we need?
Yeah, I think around that, so it was 2017, as I said, that I became the managing partner. And I think around that time, there was quite a lot of movement in the Scottish legal market. You know, we saw, for example, I can't remember the precise dates, but, you know, Dundas and Wilson, which had always been a big, big firm, they were no longer, we'd seen Macleay, Murray and Spence, no longer exist. Todd's Murray, names that, you know, if you're my age, you would be very familiar with as a lawyer. There we go. Yeah. And so I think we had then seen quite a lot of merger activity in smaller firms, you know, whether for lack of succession planning or whatever, in the Perth area, but also more widely across Scotland, having to lose their identity and, you know, go and be part of a bigger firm. And we thought, right, okay, well, we need to think about this. You know, do we want to, what's our strategy? Is it we want to build ourselves up so that we are an attractive target for someone, a bigger firm, to come and look? Is that what the momentum in the Scottish legal market is looking like? You know, we spoke to a couple of consultants, just really recognising, as you're saying, Stephen, as well, with the e-myth that, you know, we're lawyers, we're technical lawyers, you know, we need to work out, we have a business as well though, and we need to work out what's going to be best for our business and our staff and the collective, and started really exploring what it meant to be a law firm, I suppose, as well, and where we wanted to go, just piquing our interest, I suppose, beyond the technical law that we do.
And what did you decide in terms of where you wanted to go?
Yep.
I mean, obviously this is a podcast about law firm success. Sure. You know, we talk a lot to our client firms around desired future state. Yep. You know, what was the discussion around that?
I think we thought we don't want to be one of these firms who just remain static. And, you know, if you stand still, you're going backwards. And therefore, that there is we leave ourselves in a position that there is no alternative but to become part of a larger organisation. You know, you've lost all your leverage. You know, you're there to be subsumed. And we thought, right, we know we don't want that. That didn't fit with any of our individual purposes or drives, I suppose. And so we thought, right, well, we have to do something. And as I say, we spoke to a couple of consultants just about what the Scottish legal market looked like, what their feel was with, you know, where the direction of travel was, I suppose, and thought, right, okay. And we had a bit of a collective decision, right, we'll give this, let's try and get our shit together and let's give, you know, this as good a go as we can. And let's really try. Because I think up until that point, our firm had been on the go for, you know, more than 120 years. It existed for a long time. But it was more a collection of technicians, I would say, that happened to work under the same branding, almost like an advocate stable, you know, with our headed notepaper or whatever, and pulling, you know, cashier and reception services, rather than actually exploring what our purpose was, why are we doing this, what makes us good at our jobs, and we've spent the last 6 years, I suppose, thus far, and will continue to do so, working out what motivates us, what makes us a bit different from other firms, and why that is hopefully attractive to our clients and to staff who want to come and work for us.
And what would your assessment be of that now in retrospect?
Looking backwards. We always, this is slightly cheesy, but we always talk about our McNabbsness. Right. So it's slightly quirky, slightly different. We have... The firm has grown quite substantially over the last 10 years, anyway, both in terms of revenue, but also staff and geographically as well. But it's just doing things a bit differently and always remembering that we're a personal legal services firm, and our job is always about people, whether and personal relationships, whether that's with your staff, whether that's with your clients, whether that's with your third-party suppliers, and making sure that's front and centre of everything that we do.
And so it sounds as if that maybe part of that has been working on establishing your brand values.
Yes.
And I know you work with Julie.
Yes.
Pello, is it?
Pello.
And that's very helpful in terms of understanding the way that you talk to one another, that you talk to your clients, the way in which your staff understand.
Yep.
And that can remove a lot of the uncertainty around that type of thing. And was that easy to bring? We're all partners.
There are always going to be some people who get it and who are more engaged in and are interested in that part of the business. There are some staff, I would say, not restricted to partners, who are more interested in just being the technical experts and just being a technician, and that's absolutely fine. It's always been something that has interested me, sort of, that I haven't heard of the E-Myth, but it sounds like I can resonate completely with what you've told me about it. But I've always been someone who's quite interested in other, management books or some of the business psychology books. Even things like Getting to Yes and, the negotiation tact, it just interests me. And I think from our perspective, everyone was interested in making the business as successful as it could be. And we thought, what's to be nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go and give it a go and see what we can do.
And from a personal perspective, did you put your hand up or were you pushed forward?
I think I was nominated.
Right. And how have you found that transition?
I think it's not static. It evolves. Some weeks are much more management heavy than others. Some weeks are completely absorbed. If I've got a big divorce case coming up, then I'm completely absorbed in that particular case. I think one of the massive challenges is jumping from different roles and putting your different hat on from there. But where I think I'm fortunate, because I've been at McNabb's for 21 years now, absolutely terrifyingly. And I've seen, and the business has changed so much in that time, but it feels like a bit of a natural evolution. So because I've been there so long and worked with the same colleagues for a large majority for so long as well, it feels like we've all kind of got that transition together, I suppose.
And it sounds as if, which I think can get lost in terms of the overall pursuit of wealth, that it sounds like you've got a family within the business as well. It's probably dysfunctional. There's probably some siblings that you like more than others. However, it sounds like a place of comfort for you. And I don't mean that in a sort of comfort as in not wanting to push your boundaries or anything like that, but just somewhere that feels like home. Yeah,
I think that's absolutely right. Because I've been there so long, and because the changes that the business has been through have been largely, not exclusively, but largely because we've driven those changes as well, rather than having them imposed externally as well. It is. I'm comfortable there because I know the business. I know how it works. I know our challenges. I know our strengths, but I absolutely know our weaknesses as well. And just having had the opportunity to live that, I suppose, and evolve with the business, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
And we've had staff that have worked with us. I mean, so we have some staff that I have worked with, not necessarily at McNabb's, but since I was 16 and doing work experience before I went to uni.
Right, okay.
So there are a lot of long-standing relationships there as well.
Well, I mean, I think for those who don't know, the type of area in which you operate geographically is a relatively affluent part of Scotland with a lot of nice towns and villages, nice place to live, I imagine, and a nice place to spend your time. But the movement... So the movement into you're operating a hybrid role. At what point do you think that becomes impossible?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and one that I have posed to myself and had posed to me, I have to say, lots of times over the last 3-4 years. I think I quite often, so I work with a coach, and he quite often says to me, right, okay, well, which one do you prefer, Ruth? Do you like the management? Do you like the fee earning? And I can't decide. And it's sometimes, it will oscillate from week to week, but I fundamentally, I like being involved in the fee earning work to some extent. I like the client relationships. I enjoy seeing someone who comes to see me pretty much broken after they've separated or had a significant life event, and then working with them to get to the point where they can see a way forward, and we've helped them from that perspective. And that's why I started doing family law. And so part of me is really reluctant to step away from that and to say, right, okay, I'll just do the management. And I actually I hope that it makes me a better managing partner, because I still have so much client contact and I can understand what the challenges are, both for our staff in dealing with clients as well, but for our clients ourselves. So, sorry, I'm not sure I've answered that question.
No, I think it's a really difficult one, I think, for the managing partner within law firms, because unlike other businesses where the manager is brought in because of their managerial skills, whether it might be a director of operations,
sure,
or a COO, or whatever it might be within the legal sector, which is quite, you move from being a technician into a managing partner. Now, if you make that full-time move, it's difficult to move back.
Absolutely.
And the tenure only lasts so long.
Yeah. So because this was a new role, we don't because we're a relatively small firm, we don't have the rolling 3-year appointment, for example, that you see some of the bigger firms having, and a formal election. And nobody's challenged me for the role yet. I mean, some weeks I would gladly be passing the mantle on, when there's particular challenges. But I mean, I don't know that you would ever. Or maybe there will come a time when I think, right, okay, do you know what? We've built the department up that I'm involved in as a fee earner sufficiently that there is enough depth of an experience, as well as bodies, that I can take a step back. But I think I would only want to do that if I wanted to do it as well, because I do think it still having some involvement, as I say, in client work is a good thing, I think.
See, it's funny that you say that, because I over the course of the past year, it's been very illuminating for me, in that I've understood, as a result of bringing in people with significant agency experience, that actually I have at points performed the role of the entrepreneur and the manager, and actually I'm a terrible manager.
I couldn't possibly comment, but I can understand why, and that's probably the same for me as well, just of necessity. But what we have tried to do is, recognise what your strengths are. Yeah. Recognise what your weaknesses are, and that's probably more important. Yeah. And so, we have brought in IT outsource, marketing outsource, HR outsource. I have a coach. I'm part of a peer-to-peer business leaders group, but we've extended that to all our partners as well, in terms of coaching, not from a lawyer, but from a business development, not in terms of expanding your business, but just more how to be an entrepreneur, how to run a business, and trying to help bridge that gap between technician and moving on to being a partner in a law firm, and therefore an entrepreneur in some role as well. And just trying to recognise what we don't know, and not getting stuck with the ego, which I think sometimes you see in law firms, of I'm a really good lawyer, so I must be a really good partner, and I'll be a really good manager. Yeah. And we all know that that's not always the case.
Yeah, I think I've been guilty, it can be easy to confuse how much money you're making with how clever you are.
Yep.
The more senior partners, so as you were moving into the managing partner role, I imagine there was more senior partners there at that time.
Yes, there were.
They were probably getting used to this idea that suddenly Ruth, who'd been there forever, was now in charge. How was that, and are they still there?
Yeah, yes. So I think there were two partners who were more senior to me at that point. Both of them were hugely supportive of me taking on this role. Neither one of them would have wanted to do it. And I think that I'm really fortunate that I've had that support as well. One has now retired. One is about to take a step back and retire in a couple of months' time. So that is a transition for me as well, in terms of these are people that I have worked with for a long time. But no, I've had nothing but support from my fellow partners since I took on that role.
And how have
so
you,
far, anyway.
Well, I'm sure, I mean, it sounded at the time as if it was a very collaborative, collegiate process that you were involved in, where it was a recognition, we need somebody to be taking this role and we need the best person in the business to do that.
Absolutely. It was by no stretch of the imagination any kind of power grab or, and we have never been a partnership, thankfully, I'll touch wood, where people's elbows are out or there's particularly jostling for position. Yeah. And I think, when I hear horror stories from other places, I think, gosh, we're really, really, really fortunate in that.
And we talked before this discussion around those partners moving on.
Yep.
And managing the succession planning process within your business.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk a wee bit about that? Because I'm sure that's also something that is a shared concern of many law firm partners all across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, we had seen and continue to see, I suppose, in our geographical area, but I'm sure all over Scotland as well, that people don't start thinking about, right, well, what's my exit strategy? What's next for me? Until it's almost too late to doing it, recognising that these things can't happen overnight or even even within a year period. So, I mean, in the last year, I've had quite a lot of change in that, as I mentioned, one of our senior partner, in fact, Stuart is taking a step back from the end of February. That's been a very managed situation over 3-4 years where he's become part-time and taken that step back to help him, I suppose, as well as the business manage that transition. We've recruited another partner who's somebody that worked with us years ago to come back, and she's been in situ alongside Stuart for nearly 2 years now. And we've expanded at a more junior level so that we can hopefully create the right shape of the department, but trying not to lose the breadth of knowledge, I suppose, that we had. I also had one of my more junior partners who I'd worked with for 15 years left the firm to go and sit as a summary sheriff, which all happened within a relatively short period of time. So found myself just reflecting, I suppose, that these two partners who I had always had a great working relationship with, still do have a great relationship with, were going to be not sitting around our partnership table, and how did that make me feel, and just pausing and reflecting on that. We had already brought on 2 other partners maybe 2 years previously, always, I think, recognising that I think one of our strengths as a firm has been having quite a junior partnership, not having lots of people in their 60s sitting around the table expecting that their capital account's going to be paid out and everyone else is there solely for that purpose, and trying to create, I suppose, a dynamic partnership where everybody recognised the entrepreneurial role that they had to play as well. So we're now in a situation that once Stuart retires next month, that we will have 5 partners. I'll be the oldest. I think we have one partner who will be in his early 40s, and the rest are all in their 30s.
And so it sounds like you've managed this succession part. Are you able to summarise what you think would be the key element or the key elements around succession planning in a relatively small firm? I
think encouraging honesty with everybody around the table about what their own personal objectives are and what their own personal plans are, and trying to scope out a plan really, in very general terms, whether that's, over the next year, over the next 2 years, over the next 5 years as well. Always be looking out, I think, for people's whose values align with what yours are and what the firm's are. I think just, always thinking about the bigger picture, because I think anyone who has worked as a partner in a law firm knows, things will come from left field on that idle Tuesday afternoon and completely throw you. And so you need to be able to pivot and adapt and think, right, okay, that wasn't part of the plan for this week, or this month or this year, but right, what are we going to do? And then just being able to pause and reflect, thinking about where both whom might be a good fit for you if you're going to look externally, looking within the firm already as to who could be supported to grow, to get in. They might be a pure technician just now, but who could you support to grow, to get into that role? Or alternatively, looking for other firms potentially, I suppose, or to merge with, to try and create a new business entity as well. And that we're always looking for, how does our business evolve, and not having our minds closed as to how that might be, I suppose.
And talking about the future, one of the things that I've heard you talk about is around attracting and retaining female talent in particular, given the fact that we now have more women than men entering the legal profession.
Yeah, that's right.
And I noticed from your partnership that, and it looks as if it's swinging there are, which is, great to see. I'm always of the view, a person's a person.
Yeah.
And you want to recruit the right person. However, typically women, or traditionally, have had sort of different requirements around work.
Yeah.
Because biologically, they're the ones who end up, pregnant, or raising having to raise a family initially.
Yep.
So how is it that you're working on that, or what's important to you around all of that?
I think it's one of these things which, when I was in my 20s, I would say, and looking round, who else was involved, who were my role models, who were, my mentors. And certainly in the Tayside area at that time, there were very few female partners. There were certainly very few equity female partners. And I don't think I can think of anyone that was a managing female partner or held that role. Now, in fairness, that was 20 years ago as well. But I just thought, it didn't feel like there was necessarily anything that to aspire to from that perspective.
Like there was a glass ceiling?
Yeah. And I've been very fortunate, and I'm very conscious that, as I said, my partners have, without fail, always been supportive of me and my role, and ultimately recognised, I think, that I'll work hard. That might mean that I need to go to sports day. That might mean I've got 2 kids that I'll need to go and leave at 4:45 to pick them up from nursery. I'll work part-time where it needs be. And the partnership's view has always been, do what you need to do. We'll bear with you. But I know that's a very privileged position, and that is absolutely not the position that a lot of my friends from uni, my contemporaries, have had as well. I hope it is getting better. I think it is getting better, particularly in bigger firms, and bigger firms who are able to offer, for example, longer periods of paternity leave or parental leave. Some big firms, I think, are offering a year's parental leave, irrespective of whether it's, mother or father, which is great to see. But I think recognising that, you're saying absolutely more entrance into the legal profession are female. But if you look up towards the top level, who's an equity partner, who's a managing partner, the statistics are still pretty appalling. There's a recent Times study that talks about, I think it's something like 20% of around a board table are female. Now that's part of that, I think, is absolutely is because, as you're talking about, that women have traditionally had more caring responsibilities as well, and that employers have not been as flexible perhaps as they are now. I really hope that in 10 years' time a bit of the lag from that has dissipated, and it's not, the statistics are not quite as stark. I mean, in fairness, I'm not here to say women are hard done by, but I think just recognising as well that women are sometimes don't put themselves forward for these roles, that firms don't create the environment which allows women to think that they can put themselves forward without selling their soul.
Well, in terms of selling their soul, in terms of the time that's required, or? Yeah,
the time and the commitment, I suppose. And that's not just in terms of fee earning work or supervising work or whatever that you're doing in that managerial role, but also in terms of what the business development expectations are. So a lot of the big firms, for example, I know, well, the expectation is that you're going to record however many business development hours, and things are slightly better perhaps. I'm not sure they're massively better, but a lot of those business development opportunities are, Monday to Friday, straight after work. And if you've got young kids to pick up from nursery or whatever, then, that is a challenge. So it's just trying to start a bit of a conversation and a bit of an awareness, I suppose.
I mean, it definitely is an interesting conversation to have, and important that it's raised, because every business wants to attract the best talent.
Absolutely.
The best possible talent. And if, as a result of failing to think about the ways in which you can accommodate women and their progression within the workplace, means that you're then not able to get that talent, well, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. And like you discussed, one of the reasons that I stopped being a lawyer very quickly was because I wasn't interested in the lack of flexibility.
Yep.
It didn't mean I didn't want to work hard.
Absolutely.
And it's the same, and it's the same when you have family commitments which require you to be there, which is the most important thing, over the piece with your family, because you can't get that time back.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that you don't want to progress.
Oh, absolutely. And, I've become part of a group called Look Up and Beyond, which is started by a lady called Naima Sajid, who operates a business called Diversity Plus. And Naima has created this group of women who are in the legal profession from lots of different, from private practice, from, in-house, practicing, non-practicing, but who have an interest in, right, okay, this is where we are just now, but how can we make it better for the 20-year-old self, 20 years ago? What are the challenges that we still see that need to be called out and looked at? So, if your firm's, staff, hangout time is, right, we go for drinks on a Friday night, at 5:00. Okay, that's going to work for some people, but it's not going to work for everybody. And it's about just pausing and reflecting.
Lunchtime pints.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Or if it's right, okay, we'll have a five-a-side tournament.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. Do you know? But actually, right, okay, tradition. And not to say that some women are going to do that, but just pause and think about it, and think about, I suppose, how you're flexible. Lots of firms will say, oh, we operate flexible working policy. I mean, you're obliged to work it, to consider flexible working requests. But what do they actually mean? And I hope, because I have been fortunate to work hard, but, have that flexibility in the environment that we've created at McNabb's. We have lots of staff who work flexibly, who work, compressed hours, or who work non-standard hours, who will do some at home at night because they need to pick children up from nursery. And, something that comes with its challenges as well. It's not to say that's all, all rosy all the time. Inevitably, there are challenges. But I know that I really appreciated that flexibility. And it's not forever. It's for it's for a window in time. Yeah. But I think, and I hope that, that flexibility being afforded lets people continue in their careers that they might otherwise just think, do you know what, this is all too hard, it's all too much of a challenge, my family life's suffering. Nobody can have it all. There are always compromises to be had, but I think, working flexibly. I hate the idea of a work-life balance, because to me that's almost like the scales of justice, and they've got to sit, entirely parallel with each other. Sometimes work's going to steal more of your time, but as long as life sometimes steals a bit back of your work time, then in the round is what we try and aspire to.
Yeah, I think it's because it can be a bit like having two jobs.
Undoubtedly.
And I think trying to build, there are various phases. We mentioned that earlier. We're at a similar age. I imagine, as I did, when you're starting off in your career, you work harder.
Yep.
Because you're trying to establish yourself, you're learning, you're trying to build a career, and then as that progresses and you begin to build up some momentum, then it's not that you take your foot off the gas, but that you're able to understand how to balance things a bit better. But I think that takes time.
And experience as well. And also that life experience, I think, to be able to then take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because we see it with, our NQs and more junior fee earning staff as well. Their focus is all on what their fees are this month, and just very much focused on being the technician as well. And it's only but we're trying to work with them to encourage them to take a step back and to look at, right, okay, well, did you provide an excellent service to that client? It's not just, do you know the law? And I wrote a killer letter that put the other side back in their place. That's not just what the job's about as well. And trying to encourage them, I suppose, to have that introspection as well, and move and recognise beyond the technician as to, how it all actually works.
And the finally on that point, what do you think are the key elements of attracting and retaining female talent?
I mean, flexibility has got to be the key. I think recognising that the challenges that people have, whether that's a caring responsibility for children, for parents, for a family member, one size does not fit all, that we're all here to live, that work's important, that the business is important because it provides a livelihood for 44 of us, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And I think showing that you care, showing that you understand. There will be things that, that come along and will throw a spanner in the works, but that you can, 9 times out of 10, find a solution if you talk about it and think through what the challenges are and work flexibly. Not being closed, I suppose, in your thinking, I would say would be the biggest challenge in terms of whether that's what kind of work, when the work is done, how that's communicated to clients, just, I suppose, trying to have that collaborative ethos of, like, we'll find a solution to this.
It goes back to being honest as well as you're talking about your discussions.
Totally. And I think honesty and authenticity as well, because everybody that works in the firm sees me, living that. I suppose that quite often I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm actually running out to pick up my kids just now. So there's a half-hour window on a Tuesday afternoon that I don't put anything in my diary. And that's fine. And I think people see that, I hope they see that I'm still doing a good job, that I'm there for my clients. I'm there for, if there's any problems. It doesn't need to be the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, sell your soul. You can still do your job and on your terms, I suppose.
And finally, law firm success. What does that mean to you? Yeah,
I think a law firm is a living and breathing and dynamic thing, or it should be, in my view as well. And I think a successful law firm, for me, and law firm success is one which has a direction of travel, one which evolves, one which is, attractive to clients, which is attractive to their employees that are already there, as well as new clients as well. financial success as well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're all here because we've got mortgages to pay and and people to support. But a law firm success is something that I think, it's a bit of an intangible, I would say, because as you say, everyone has an objective measure as to what that might be, and it's, whether you have, your income of $500,000 a year or whatever like that. But for me, it's more about a successful law firm is one which has a dynamism and a clear trajectory forward.
And do you feel that as a result of your changes that you've made over the course of the past few years at McNabb's, that pre-2017 and where you are now, you feel you're on a more clearly defined trajectory towards the type of success you've discussed?
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, Rome was not built in a day, and it will always be. There will always be things to be done, always. And, we always have a joke around our partnership table that things never stay static. You might think, right, okay, we've got over that jumped through that hoop or sorted out that problem, and then there's always something else. And I think it's learning to be comfortable with there'll always be something else, there'll always be another challenge, there'll always be another opportunity as well. But yeah, I'm proud of the firm and everything that we've done over the last 6 years. But there's still lots more to do. And that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you.
For your time, and best of luck in 2024.
Thank you very much.
So thanks very much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying our content. We'd be delighted to hear any feedback that you have. You can find out more about the Your Law Firm Success podcast at mltdigital.co.uk/podcast. Please subscribe, please share with your friends, please share with anyone who you know that you think would be interested.